back. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 259, TIPIṭAKA, part 171, in which we will continue reading Mahāvagga VI. This is part 6 of Mahāvagga VI. Mahāvagga means great division. It's the part that comes after the rules for monks and the rules for nuns in the Vinaya Piṭaka, the discipline basket of the three baskets of pre-sectarian early Buddhism, also known as the TIPIṭAKA. In Sanskrit it's Tripitaka, but in Pali it's Tipitaka. It was Tipitaka before it was Tripitaka, basically. Okay. Sorry about the long break. You might have noticed I've been away for a while. You might also have noticed that the walls around the Kakejiku hanging banner, banners on either side, and the mandala above my head. Let's have a look at the mandala. That's what it looks like if you could see above my head. But we're going horizontal for this channel. Anyway, we're in a different part of Goa now. We were in South Goa, little village called Majorda, and now we're in Porvorim, a less little village. So pretty soon we'll have Wi-Fi and everything. Anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Hope you've been doing well. And we'll resume regular episodes again. This is the triumphant return of Buddhist Books Podcast after a month-long hiatus, with the exception of one episode that was shot on the balcony of an Airbnb that my wife and I were staying at while we were mid-shifting. Okay, let's go ahead and get to today's reading, shall we? Let's find out what the boys are up to. All right. Excuse me. Oh, if you want to start at the beginning of the Tipitaka, then you may wish to click right there. You can go all the way to part 1. You can go to part 100 and anything. Well, we're on part 171 today. All right. Then the Lord, having stayed in Benares for as long as he found suiting, set out on tour for Andakavinda, together with a large order of monks, with the 1,250 monks. Now at that time the country people, having loaded much salt and oil, and husked rice and solid food into wagons, followed close after the order of monks, with the awakened one at its head, saying, quote, "When we get our turn, then we will make a meal," parentheses, "for them," end parentheses, end quote. And there were at least 500 of those who eat the remnants of food. Then the Lord, walking on tour, in due course arrived at Andakavinda. Then it occurred to a certain Brahmin, who did not receive his turn, quote, "For the last 2 months I have been following the order of monks with the awakened one at its head, thinking, quote within quotes, when I get my turn I will make a meal, parentheses, for them, end parentheses, end quote within quotes, but I do not get my turn. I am alone, and many of my household affairs are going to ruin. I suppose I were to look into the refectory, and prepare that which I do not see in the refectory." End quote. Then that Brahmin, looking into the refectory, did not see 2 things, kanji and honey lumps. Amazing coincidence. That happens to be my nickname in certain circles. I'm just kidding. It's not my nickname. Then that Brahmin approached the venerable Ananda. We've got Ananda sitting here to my left, your right as you're facing the screen, because it reverses depending. Never mind. Having approached, he spoke thus to the Venerable Ananda. Quote, "Now it occurred to me, good Ananda." Let's put the Brahmin over here. And this is the Brahmin, random Brahmin. I don't know. Doesn't have a name, so when there's a nameless Brahmin, then we'll use whatever that is. I don't know. Editor Edward, give us a wave. That's Editor Edward. He's going to decide in the future. Okay, from my perspective. In the past, from your perspective. It all makes sense, right? Kind of intuitively, at least. Anyway, now it occurred to me, good Ananda, he said to him. Looking into what? All right. As I did not get a turn, quote within quotes, for the last 2 months, 4 dots. Suppose I, by the way, thank you, Polytech Society. I'm not giving you a hard time today. I'm just saying thank you. Get yourself a copy of this by going to that website. I'll put it in the link below too. Why is it not in the description of, well, yeah, I should put that in the description. Anyway, sorry. Suppose I were to look into the refectory and prepare that which I do not see in the refectory, and, quote within quotes, so I, good Ananda, looking into the refectory, did not see 2 things, kanji and honey lumps. If I, good Ananda, were to prepare kanji and honey lumps, would the Reverend Gautama accept them from me? End quote. Quote, well then, I don't know Ananda's voice. Well then, Brahmin, I will ask the Lord. End quote. Then the Venerable Ananda told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, well then, Ananda, let him prepare them. End quote. Parentheses, Ananda, and parentheses, said, quote, well then, Brahmin, prepare them, end quote. Then that Brahmin, towards the end of that night, having had a quantity of kanji and honey lumps prepared, brought them to the Lord, saying, quote, may the Reverend Gautama accept kanji and honey lumps from me. End quote. Quote, well then, Brahmin, give them to the monks. End quote. The monks, being scrupulous, did not accept them. Parentheses, the Lord said, and parentheses, quote, accept them, monks. Make use of them. End quote. Then that Brahmin, having with his own hand served and satisfied the order of monks, with the awakened one at its head, with a quantity of kanji and honey lumps, when the Lord had washed his hand, and had withdrawn his hand from his bowl, sat down at a respectful distance. Then, as this Brahmin was sitting down at a respectful distance, the Lord spoke thus to him, quote, Brahmin, there are these 10 advantages from kanji. What 10? In giving kanji, one gives life, one gives beauty, one gives ease, one gives strength, one gives intelligence. Kanji, when it is drunk, checks hunger, keeps off thirst, regulates wind, cleanses the bladder, digests raw remnants of food. These, Brahmin, are the 10 advantages of kanji. End quote. By the way, when the question was asked, what 10, that was Lord Buddha asking himself and then answering. So I didn't neglect to say end quote. The Brahmin replied, quote, end quote. Okay, where were we? Quote, To the discerning who gives kanji duly, D-U-L-Y, at the right time to one who lives on others' food, it confers 10 things upon him: life and beauty, ease and strength. From him intelligence arises from it. It dispels hunger, thirst, and wind. It cleanses the bladder. It digests food. This medicine is praised by the wayfarer. Therefore, kanji should be given constantly by a man longing for ease, by those aspiring to deva-like joys, or wanting human prosperity. End quote. Then the Lord, having given thanks to that Brahmin in these verses, rising from his seat, departed. Then the Lord, having on this occasion given reasoned talk, addressed the monks, saying, quote, I allow, monks, kanji and honey lumps. End quote. All right. The people heard, quote, it is said that kanji is allowed by the Lord and honey lumps. End quote. These prepared, eating kanji and honey lumps early in the morning. The monks, parentheses each, end parentheses satisfied. In the early morning with eating kanji and a honey lump. Did not eat as much as expected in the refectory. Now at that time, a certain chief minister, young in faith, came to have invited the order of monks with the awakened one at its head for the morrow. Then it occurred to that chief minister, young in faith, quote, suppose I were to prepare 1,250 bowls of meat for the 1,250 monks, and should take 1 bowl of meat up to each monk. And quote, that'd take a very long time, dude. All right. Then that chief minister, young in faith, towards the end of that night, having had sumptuous solid food, soft food prepared, and 1,250 bowls of meat, had the time announced to the Lord, saying, quote, Lord, it is time. The meal is ready. End quote. Then the Lord, having dressed in the morning, taking his bowl and robe, approached the dwelling of that great minister, young in faith. Having approached, he sat down on the appointed seat together with the order of monks. Then that chief minister, young in faith, attended on the monks in the refectory. The monks spoke thus, quote, give a little, sir, give a little, sir, end quote. Parentheses, he said, end quote, quote, do not you, honored sirs, accept so very little, thinking, quote, in quotes, this chief minister is young in faith, end quote, in quotes, much solid food, soft food, and 1,250 bowls of meat have been prepared by me, thinking, quote, in quotes, I will take 1 bowl of meat up to each monk, end quote, within quotes, except, honored sirs, as much as you want. End quote. Quote, sir, it is not for this reason that we are accepting so very little, but we were, parentheses each, end parentheses, satisfied in the early morning with eating kanji and a honey lump. That is why we are accepting so very little. End quote. Then that chief minister, young in faith, looked down upon, criticized spread it about, saying, quote, "How can these reverend sirs make use of someone else's eating kanji? It is not that I am not competent to give as much as they want," end quote, and angry, displeased, longing to insult the monks. He went round filling their bowls and saying, quote, "Eat it or take it away," end quote. Then that chief minister, young in faith, having with his own hand served and satisfied the order of monks with the awakened one at its head, with sumptuous food, solid and soft, sat down at a respectful distance when the Lord had eaten and had withdrawn his hand from the bowl. As this chief minister, young in faith, was sitting down at a respectful distance, the Lord, having gladdened, rejoiced, roused, delighted him with talk on Dhamma, rising from his seat, departed. But soon after the Lord had departed, that chief minister, young in faith, became remorseful and conscience-stricken, and thought, quote, "For me it is unprofitable. For me it is not profitable. For me it is ill-gotten. For me it is not well-gotten, that I, angry, displeased, longing to insult the monks, went round filling their bowls and saying, quote within quotes, 'Eat it or take it away,' end quote within quotes. Now is much merit produced for me, or demerit?" End quote. Then that chief minister, young in faith, approached the Lord. Having greeted the Lord, he sat down at a respectful distance. As he was sitting down at a respectful distance, that chief minister, young in faith, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, "Now I, Lord, soon after the Lord had departed, became remorseful and conscience-stricken, thinking, quote within quotes, 'For me it is unprofitable.'" The Polytext Society is sparing us the experience of reading the same thing twice that we just read. Fair enough. "Now, Lord, is much merit produced for me or demerit?" End quote. Quote, "From the time when, sir, the order of monks with the awakened one at its head was invited by you for the morrow, much merit was produced for you. From the time when one of your lumps of boiled rice was accepted by each monk, much merit was produced for you. Heaven worlds are assured for you." End quote. Then that chief minister, young in faith, thinking, quote, "It is said that it was profitable for me. It is said that it was well gotten by me. It is said that much merit was produced for me. It is said that heaven worlds are assured for me." End quote. Joyful, elated, rising up from his seat, having greeted the Lord, departed, keeping his right side towards him. Then the Lord, on this occasion, in this connection, having had the order of monks convened, questioned the monks, saying, quote, "Is it true, as is said, monks, parentheses, although, and parentheses, invited elsewhere, made use of someone else's eating kanji?" Oh, that monks, although being invited elsewhere, made use of someone else's eating kanji. End quote. Quote, "It is true, Lord." End quote. The awakened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, "How, monks, can these foolish men, invited elsewhere, make use of someone else's eating kanji? Is it not, monks, It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, end parentheses, pleased, 4 dots. They're really into this 4 dots thing. There have been 3 dots for 5 books, now it's 4 dots. End quote. And having rebuked them, having given reasoned talk, he addressed the monks, saying, quote, monks, if one is invited elsewhere, someone else's eating kanji should not be made use of. Whoever should, parentheses, so, end parentheses, make use of it, should be dealt with according to the rule, end quote. But what about the honey lumps? Loophole. Then the Lord, having stayed at Andakavinta for as long as he found suiting, set out on tour for Rajagaha, together with the large order of monks, with 1,250 monks. Now at that time, Balata Kakana was going along the high road from Rajagaha to Andakavinda with 500 wagons, all filled with jars of sugar. Then the Lord saw Balata Kakana from afar, and seeing him, he stepped aside from the road and sat down at the root of a certain tree. Then Balata Kakana approached the Lord. Having approached, he greeted the Lord. He stood at a respectful distance. As he was standing at a respectful distance, Balata Kakana spoke thus to the Lord, quote, I, Lord, want to give 1 jar of sugar to each monk, end quote. Quote, well then, do you, Kakana, bring just 1 jar of sugar? End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Balata Kakana, having answered the Lord in assent, bringing just 1 jar of sugar, approached the Lord. Having approached, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, the jar of sugar is brought, Lord. What line of conduct do I follow, Lord? End quote. Quote, well then, do you, Kakana, give the sugar to the monks? End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Balata Kakana, having answered the Lord in assent, having given the sugar to the monks, spoke thus to the Lord. Quote, Lord, the sugar is given to the monks, and I have much sugar over. What line of conduct do I follow? End quote. Quote, well then, Kakana, give the monks as much sugar as they want. End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Balata Kakana, having answered the Lord in assent, having given the monks as much sugar as they wanted, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, Lord, as much sugar as they wanted has been given to the monks, and I have much sugar over. What line of conduct do I follow, Lord? End quote. Quote, well then, do you, Kakana, serve the monks with sugar? End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Balata Kakana, having answered the Lord in assent, served the monks with sugar. Some monks filled bowls, and they filled sweet-water strainers with bags. Then Balata Kakana, having served the monks with sugar, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, Lord, the monks are served with sugar, and I have much sugar over. What line of conduct do I follow, Lord? End quote. Quote, well then, do you, Kakana, give sugar to those who eat the remains of food? End quote. There's a footnote. It seems as if they had attached themselves to the company of monks doing the journeys from Benares it's a group of people that hang around. Groupies. All right. 1,250 monks and some unknown number of groupies. All right. What? Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Piṭaka, having answered the Lord in assent, having given sugar to those who eat the remains of food, spoke thus to the Lord. Quote, Lord, sugar has been given to those who eat the remains of food, and I have much sugar over. What line of conduct do I follow, Lord? End quote. Quote, well then, Kakana, give those who eat the remains of food as much sugar as they want. End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Piṭaka, having answered the Lord in assent, having given those who eat the remains of food as much sugar as they wanted, spoke thus to the Lord. Quote, Lord, as much sugar as they wanted has been given to those who eat the remains of food, and I have much sugar over. What line of conduct do I follow, Lord? End quote. Quote, well then, Kakana, do you serve the sugar with sugar those who eat the remains of food? End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Piṭaka, having answered the Lord in assent, served with sugar those who eat the remains of food. Some of those who eat the remains of food filled pots and pitchers, and they filled baskets, and and parentheses there, end parentheses, clothes. Then Piṭaka, having served with sugar those who eat the remains of food, spoke thus to the Lord. Quote, Lord, those who eat the remains of food have been served with sugar, and I have much sugar over. What line of conduct do I follow, Lord? End quote. Quote, I do not see anyone, Kakana, in the world with its devas, maras, and brahmas, nor in the race of recluses and brahmins, devas and men, who, having made use of that sugar, could digest it properly, except a truth-finder, or a truth-finder's disciple. Well then, Kakana, throw away that sugar where there is but little green grass, or drop it into the water where there are no living creatures. End quote. Quote, yes, Lord. End quote. And Piṭaka, having answered the Lord in assent, dropped that sugar into water where there were no living creatures. Is that code? No. Then that sugar, thus placed in the water, sizzled and hissed and sent forth steam and smoke. As a plowshare heated the livelong day, if placed in water, sizzles and hisses and sends forth steam and smoke, so did this sugar, when placed in the water, sizzle and hiss and send forth steam and smoke. Then Piṭaka, alarmed, and with his hair standing on end, approached the Lord. Having greeted the Lord, he sat down at a respectful distance. As Piṭaka was sitting down at a respectful distance, the Lord talked a progressive talk to him. That is to say, talk on giving, talk on moral habit, talk on heaven. He explained the peril, the vanity, the depravity of pleasures of the senses, the advantages in renouncing parentheses them, end parentheses. When the Lord knew that the mind of Piṭaka was ready, pliable, devoid of hindrances, uplifted, pleased, then he explained to him that teaching on Dhamma, which the awakened ones have themselves discovered, ill, uprising, stopping, the way. And as a clean cloth, without black specks, will easily take dye, even so, as he was, parentheses, sitting, end parentheses, on that very seat, Dhamma vision, dustless, stainless, arose to Piṭaka, that, quote, whatever is of the nature to uprise, all that is of the nature to stop." End quote. Then Piṭaka Kana, as one who had seen Dhamma, attained Dhamma, known Dhamma, plunged in to Dhamma, who had crossed over doubt, put away uncertainty, who had attained without another's help to full confidence in the teacher's instruction, spoke thus to the Lord. Quote, "Excellent Lord, excellent Lord." Even Lord, as one might set upright what had been upset. Three dots. Someone said it before. I don't know. Was it in this book, previous book, first book, one of these books? Somewhere in the text, at some point, a similar situation came up, and he said a bunch of awe-stricken stuff about becoming enlightened and copy paste. Thus says the Polytech Society. Sometimes they get on my nerves a little, but I appreciate the translation nonetheless. Even so is Dhamma explained by the Lord in many a figure. I myself, Lord, am going to the Lord for refuge, to Dhamma, and to the order of monks. May the Lord accept me as a lay follower, going for refuge from this day forth, for as long as life lasts. End quote. So what was with the leftover sugar hissing like a hot plow in the water? Did they explain that? No. But it was a good story. It had a nice ending. All right. Well, I'm happy to be back. I look forward to seeing you more often. And I don't know, I think it's a little cloudy today. Sometimes the lens on the phone is cloudy. I think I just need to wipe it. And next time I'll be a little more crisp and less like I'm inside of a jello mold on the astral. But, yeah. All right. We've landed. We've unpacked our stuff, and I've got all this set up. I was waiting for that. I didn't want to, I don't know. I was being picky. I didn't want to record Buddhist Books podcast until I had a proper thing to sit in front of. All right. I'll go ahead and do the usual closing, and I'll invite you to click the link in the end, the playlist at the end, if you want to, that'll take you to the introduction, and from there you can decide what you want to do. If you want to check out more of Buddhist Books podcast, otherwise just hit like and subscribe, and then this should pop up in your suggested videos when you look at your main screen. Otherwise, if you're super interested in this, click the bell, and then you'll get a notification when a new episode comes out. All right. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.